Hello and welcome to part 8 of this F1 2023 season review. Today we're going to be talking all things Mercedes. We're going to be talking why I think they have the most to gain this off-season, why I think that they overperformed their car and why they shouldn't have finished P2. And then we're also going to talk about the season. We're going to talk about Lewis Hamilton, we're going to talk about George Russell, and I'm going to give my all-round opinion on Mercedes. As you can probably tell by the hat and my F1 Manager series that I have started recently, Mercedes are my team. They're the team I support. I have a lot of feelings towards Mercedes and I have a lot of opinions. So this is where I'm going to display them. I'm going to let you know what I think. And you let me know what you think down below. And if you've liked this series, leave me a comment, leave me a like, subscribe, and keep your eyes peeled for the final episode tomorrow, which is all about Red Bull.
It's just come to my attention. 63% of you are not subscribed. What are you doing? Click that red button right now.
So we're going to now look at Mercedes' season as a whole as we skip over here. As we can see over here, you have Lewis Hamilton and George Russell as the two drivers. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton bettered George Russell this season, collecting 234 points and 6 podiums. George Russell had a very much up and down year. He made quite a few mistakes in a couple of races, like in Canada, in Singapore, which cost them massively, in my opinion. And he collected 175 points and 2 podiums. If we now take a look at the races, the standout one for Mercedes this year will obviously have to be the Spanish Grand Prix. The finishing at P2 and P3 was the best result they achieved all season. Normally, when one driver was near the podium, the other one was struggling, and most notably, that was normally Lewis Hamilton. This season has been a very topsy-turvy season for Mercedes. In Bahrain, straight after qualifying on that Saturday in March, Toto Wolff came out and said this concept is not it, binning it off, and that was obviously something that hindered them throughout the season. The zero pod DNA, the zero pod packaging and concept has too many limitations for this style of regulations, and that is what led to them being miles and miles away from really most teams. A lot of the time, Mercedes weren't even the second quickest team. How they ended up P2 in this championship, I don't know, because in my personal opinion, on most occasions, they were the third or fourth fastest car. You had Aston and Ferrari early on who were quicker than them, but Ferrari made a lot of mistakes. Then Aston dropped back and McLaren showed up. So there was never really a period where you looked at Mercedes and went, oh, you're clear second fastest. Like, you're easily second. It's a difficult season for Mercedes. And later we'll get on why I think they have the most to gain this off-season. So now let's look at the team's statistics. So as you can see, they had 0 wins. It says they have 2 pole positions, but I can't for the life of me remember what the second one was. The only one I can remember was Lewis Hamilton at Hungary, a car which never should have been anywhere near pole, and he puts it on pole. Then they obviously got 8 podiums this season. They had 21 top 5 finishers and 37 points finishers. They finished second in the championship, a mere 3 points ahead of Ferrari. That is a tiny gap, and one which can all be amounted down to that P2, P3 in Spain when Charles Leclerc finished, I think he finished 11th in that race. And as you can see, they had 4 DNFs this season. One of them in Qatar was a teammate collision with Hamilton and Russell on lap 1. One was in the United States where, along with Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton's plank was overworn. The other 2 were relating to George Russell, but I'm sure that there was 5 and there was a DNF in Australia as well. They collected 4 fastest laps. They collected 4 fastest laps this season, and those 4 points could have been the difference and were the difference at the end of this season. The average finish position was 7.14 this season, and the average qualifying result was 6.43. So now we're going to get in and take a look on the drivers. So let's first take a look at George Russell, and let's go through his 2023 season. So here we go. As you can see here, they finished equal level terms on qualifying. They were 11-11. Lewis has openly said this season that he struggled in qualifying. It was never where it needed to be, and he probably could have got some much better results if his qualifying pace was where it needed to be. Miami, most notably, where I think he came back to finish P6 after qualifying 12th. But in race trim, it was everything. It was all about Lewis Hamilton. Quite clearly, the better racer this season. He finished 15 races ahead of George Russell. So let's now take a look at George Russell's season. And as you can see, his best race was probably the Spanish GP, where he finished third. He never finished above third this season, and he DNF'd on 3 different occasions. In Australia, which was an engine failure. Canada, he hit the wall, and Sao Paulo, again, was to do with engine temperatures. Obviously, in Singapore, he also had a DNF where he crashed on the final lap, but I think he was classified in P16, as it shows there, as a result of the period of when he crashed, because he was on the final lap and there was cars that had been lapped multiple times, so he ended up finishing ahead of them. And obviously, in the Dutch GP, he finished 17th. So let's take a look at his statistics. So let's get on to George Russell's statistics. Obviously, no wins, no pole positions this season. He got himself 2 podiums, both third place finishes. He finished in the top 5 9 times and 17 times in the points. He finished 8th in the World Drivers' Championships. Personally, I think he should have been a lot higher, and obviously those DNFs that occurred for him, especially Australia, which was out of his control, impacted where he finished. He finished on 175 points. He collected 1 fastest lap. He had an average finish result of 8.09, as you can see on the screen, and a qualifying result of 6.5. For me, George Russell struggled a lot this year, and I think it's because he came in with so much expectation and hype. He beat Lewis last year. Obviously, there's a lot of context around 2022 and why Lewis ended where he ended, but George beat him. He comes in this season with all that hype around, you beat Lewis Hamilton, and I just don't think George was able to cope with that. I think next season he needs to be a lot better, and hopefully if they have a more competitive car, George can be closer to Lewis, so they've got 2 dogs in the fight and are able to maximise every result, because that's what they're going to need if they want to try and beat Red Bull. Now let's go and take a look at Lewis Hamilton, as we're going to scroll over to the drivers here. I'm going to click on Lewis Hamilton here. So we're now on to Lewis Hamilton. Let's look at his 2023 season, which I believe to be one of the best years of his career. Obviously, he did not win a championship, but I think it's massively important to note that he put a car that was on average 4th fastest, 3rd, 4th fastest. He was battling Sergio Perez for 2nd in the Drivers' Championships. The consistency he showed this season, apart from the disqualification in Austin and the DNF in Qatar, he had a very, very consistent season. There's a few races where Mercedes struggled, the likes of Brazil, Abu Dhabi, where Lewis just couldn't quite find a rhythm, and I think that was a result of the situation in FP2, where they only really got FP3 to run, but Lewis did really well to get himself into P3, and I think if you were to give him a car on par or a little bit slower than that Red Bull, I'm talking a couple of tenths, I think Lewis would be able to challenge Max Verstappen. I think Lewis is one of the only ones on the grid right now who could take a fight to Max Verstappen and not be scared. I'm really interested to see what Mercedes do this off-season, but before we get into that, let's look at Lewis Hamilton's seasonal stats. So we're looking at the statistics here, and it says that Lewis got 2 pole positions. However, that is wrong. He only got 1 in the Hungaroring, one of his favourite circuits. He finished on the podium 6 times, and he finished in the points 20 times, in the top 5 12 times. He collected 234 points. He was only around, I think it's only around 30 points behind Sergio Perez, which obviously if you take away disqualification in Austin, if he'd have got through the race in Qatar, he probably would have been a lot closer. His One DNF was in Qatar, and his disqualification was obviously in Austin. He had an average finish result of 6.18 and an average qualifying result of 6.36. Lewis spoke a lot this season about needing to improve his qualifying. He's needed that a lot, especially this season, because he's put in some excellent race performances. You talk about Miami, where he fights his way through the field, and I think he finished 6th on that occasion. You talk about in all the other, even if you go back to last season, even in Spain, he has that first lap contact and is 20th, about 30 seconds behind the pack, and he ends up finishing. I think he finished 5th that day as well. You look at his races, and he's obviously still showing that he's got the capabilities to race at the top end of the field, but it's just his qualifying that is the problem at the moment. And I think that is mainly because of the lack of rear end in the car, which is spoken about a lot. If you've got no confidence in your rear end, you go around corner and you just snap in, and that loses you so much time. But we're going to come to the end of this video, and we're going to be talking about why I think Mercedes have the most to gain this season. So Mercedes are one of the only teams on the grid running a split concept. They're obviously running the Zero Pod DNA, which obviously has the Zero Pod packaged power unit. So it's already been mentioned a lot that if they repackage the power unit, they can gain more horsepower, which brings them back into the fight in the straight line speed. Although that's not really an area where they've massively struggled, it's an area where they are weaker than the competition. And the sole DNA of the car is based around Zero Pod. Although they have bought upgrades this season, a lot of them won't work properly until they're on a car which is away from Zero Pod. So I'm interested to see how James Allison develops over this winter. He is obviously someone who is very highly thought of within the F1 world, having been a part of Mercedes' dominant period. It'll be interesting to see how they move away from the Zero Pod, what they do to improve the car over the winter. Are they going to move the cockpit position, which is something which was mentioned earlier in the season? How are they going to stabilise the rear end? Are they going to change which suspension they use within this regulation set? So let me know what you think about Mercedes. Do you think they're going to be able to put a dog in the fight for next season? Do you think they're going to be able to battle for the championship, whether that is drivers or constructors? So let me know what you think down in the comments. Like, comment and subscribe, and Red Bull will be out tomorrow, so hit the notification bell. Let me know what you think. Watch the rest of the episodes in the series. There is 7 others. We've gone through all of them, from Ferrari to Haas. We've gone through every team, and Red Bull will be out tomorrow, so keep your eyes peeled for that one, and I will see you in my next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.